Hello, hello. Welcome to the Chrissy Mayer podcast. Today I have a longtime friend, author of the recent book, Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness, which has reached the bestseller list on Amazon, and also a recent COVID survivor, Jeffrey Gurian. Thank you so much for surviving. Wow.
I can't tell you how glad I am to see you, Christy. It's so cool. I'm
a
a little bit,
Jeffrey.
thank you, sweetheart. I'm a little bit hoarse still from, I had double pneumonia from the COVID virus. So I'm still dealing with, after 2 months, I'm still dealing with some residual effects of the pneumonia. My doctor said it's kind of normal. Thank God I never had pneumonia before. So double pneumonia means it was in both lungs. And it can take a long time. When I lay down at night, I hear this crackling noise when I breathe. So it means that there's still some fluid inside, I guess. Crazy
Wow.
stuff.
It is crazy. When did you start feeling symptoms?
I got sick on March 11th, and it was really weird. When I'm not performing, I'm out covering the comedy scene. I've been doing that for 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. So I was doing, I was trying to figure out where I caught this thing.
Yeah, which dirty comic gave this to you?
Where did I take a breath in the wrong place?
Yeah.
Because that's all it takes. Breathe in one time in the wrong place and you get the thing. And I have been doing shows, I started my own podcast from the stage of the comic strip. And my last guest, 4 days before I got sick, Ron Bennington came in to do the podcast with me at the comic strip. And then the next night, I went to see Jerry Seinfeld at the 92nd Street Y. He was doing an event with Barry Sonnenfeld about Barry's new book. And the place was packed. When I did the comic strip, we emptied the club. We made sure it was just me and Ron and my crew. Mm-hmm. That was it. People were already concerned about the virus. This was like March 7th. March 8th, I go to see Seinfeld. March 9th, I'm shooting videos at Gotham with Chris Mazzilli for a project that's coming up. And I was all over town. And Tuesday, the day before I got sick, I was supposed to go to UCB for a showcase. And I was very hesitant to go. And then at the last minute, they wound up canceling it anyway out of concern. And so that made it easier. But I did go to a National Lampoon show down on the Lower East Side, because I want to support those guys.
Yeah.
I just felt they invited me personally, and I'm like, I'm just going to go. And I got there too early, and luckily, I decided to go out and shop for food, not knowing I was going to get sick the next day. So I went I found a Trader Joe's, and I stocked up on lots of food. I went back and saw the show. People were already kind of distancing themselves that night. Wow. I remember I stayed on the side. I just said hello to a few people. And then the next day, I started sneezing and coughing, and I thought it was a cold. I was hoping it was a cold. I didn't think virus right away. I just thought, I'm coming down with a cold. On the third day, on Friday the 13th, it hit my throat. And when I get a cold, it always goes to my throat. I always get a sore throat. So I keep Z-Pak in the house.
Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, luckily, I had 2 packs of Z-Pak. Usually Z-Pak is a 5-day treatment. I had enough for 10 days.
Wow.
So I stayed on it for the 10 days. And I really think, I've been saying this, but I truly think that saved me, because I didn't know that they were using Z-Pak with hydroxychloroquine and zinc in the hospital. Not all hospitals were able to even get it. I'll get to that. But I took this Z-Pak for 10 days while I got sicker and sicker. And it kept my breathing all right, and my throat was all right, but I had every other symptom. I was running a high fever. I was getting night sweats. And usually when you get night sweats, the fever breaks. But with this, I get night sweats, the fever would break, and then it would come right back again. I was nauseous from morning to night. Literally, I don't know if you can imagine being nauseous for 24 hours a day. I could barely sleep. And I was taking Dramamine to try to counteract the nausea, and nothing helped.
You couldn't keep anything down.
No, I was able to eat. I wasn't. It didn't let me throw up. That was the problem.
Ugh.
Usually when you're nauseous, you could throw up, but this just kept you nauseous with
Oh man.
a pounding headache and body pain that was crazy, and then full body chills. My body was shaking so bad I couldn't hold the glass. And I don't know how I did it. I stuck it out for 14 days. I kept thinking every day, I have to get better tomorrow. This can't go on like this. And I kept thinking, do I have the virus? And I was hoping, because I was still breathing okay, I was thinking maybe I just have a flu, you know? But
Were you afraid to go to the hospital like
I was
early?
very afraid, yeah, because
Yeah.
I have a heart history. I had a heart attack in 2015.
Right.
And so that put me in a high risk category. And, you know, it's scary to go to an emergency room because very often they tell you there's a lot of germs there. You could get sicker by going to the hospital. So I was really scared. And I called my doctor on Friday the 20th. My kids told me, you got to call your doctor. So I called him on a Friday and he said, it sounds like you should be in the hospital. And I waited another 6 days, man. I don't know how I did it, but
Wow.
the 26th, I couldn't take the pain anymore. It was unbearable. And so that morning, I didn't want to call an ambulance in the middle of the night. It's scary enough to call an ambulance on yourself and go to the hospital. It's a real,
What a responsible adult to call your own ambulance. Yeah.
you have to, this is a very alone thing. Like, hopefully you're quarantining with Frank,
Mm-hmm.
but most people are alone. If you're not in a relationship or you're not married or you don't have your family with you, you're going through this whole thing alone. And
Yeah, that makes it hard.
it's interesting because comedy is a very solo, alone thing. You write alone, you perform alone, you do everything alone. But being sick on your alone, you know,
It's the worst. Yeah.
I have this theory that when you're really sick, you revert back to childhood. You feel like a child. You want somebody to take care of you. You feel really helpless.
Yeah, you need like a mom.
Yeah, exactly. And I was dragging myself around. So again, I was afraid to go in the middle of the night because a lot of times the people on duty are not very experienced in the middle of the night. And so I made myself wait till the morning. And then I've been wearing like pajamas for days. So I'm like, you have to get dressed to go to the hospital. So, you know me, I'm trying to figure out, what do you wear to go to the hospital, right?
Doing your hair.
I had to figure out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I jumped in the shower hoping that would help me. And it didn't really. I mean, I needed to take a shower anyway, but I thought it would revive me a little bit. I could hardly speak. It took my voice too.
Wow.
By that time, I was bleeding from my nose as well, on top of all the other symptoms. Then I'm thinking, well, I have to pack a bag now. What do I take to the hospital? I didn't know what to take. So I Googled it. I Googled, what do you take to the hospital? And I was in a real state of confusion. Because when you're that sick, and then you're scared that you have to call an ambulance in the next few minutes, I'm watching myself do this, and I'm like, I can't believe this. I have to go to the hospital.
Were you afraid that you were, it wasn't going to be like in and out? Were you afraid like, oh, I'm going to stay there for a minute?
I had no idea what they were going to do, or even if they were going to keep me. When I called 911, they interviewed me. They weren't just sending ambulances out because so many people were getting sick. So they asked me about my symptoms. And when I told them all the symptoms I had and that I was bleeding from my nose and that I had a heart condition now, they said, we'll be right over for you. And these two guys came. It was like magical. They showed up with this huge stretcher outside my door. I told them I was leaving my door open in case I couldn't get to the door because I didn't know what was going to happen to me.
Really? Wow.
And that's a very good tip to tell people. Because when you're really sick, if you need to call an ambulance, if your door is locked and you can't get to the door, they can't get into your house to get you.
Wow. I would never even have thought of that. Yeah, just leaving your front door unlocked.
I realized that when I had the heart attack and I had to call an ambulance, that I left my door open. So they show up, and these two guys were the nicest guys. And it was kind of scary. They're so all gowned and masked. And the guy took my hand and he said to me, don't worry, you're going to be okay. And I can't tell you how much that meant to me, because when you're that sick, even a simple gesture like that means a lot. And he said to me, I've transported a lot of sick people, He said, and of all the people I've transported, you have the best physical presentation that I've seen, because they were amazed that I could climb up on the stretcher by myself.
Maybe he was trying to tell you you had a nice body.
That would have got me nervous.
Hey, what's your number? Just for our records. Yeah.
They strapped me in and they got me into the freight elevator, and they wheeled me through my lobby. It's a big building. They wheeled me through.
Yes, yeah, I've been in. I've been there.
Yeah. And so they got me in the ambulance, and I asked them to take me to the hospital where my cardiologist was, and they're like, no, it's too far. We're taking you to NYU Langone, which turned out to be a blessing. Because first of all, I used to teach at NYU. I was there for 12 years.
Right.
And NYU happened to have Plaquenil. And there's this big controversy now about whether it works or not. Man, it worked on me. I was so sick, and it worked on me, and that's all I know. And I don't understand why there is such controversy about it. But in any case, they got me to the emergency room, and emergency rooms are really scary. I hope you never have to be there, but it's insane. And they wheeled me into a cubicle. By that time, my blood pressure had dropped. You know how they say 120/80 is normal? Mm-hmm. So my 80 dropped to 42.
Wow.
So my circulatory system was collapsing. It was hard for them to get a vein to start an IV, because right away they put you on an IV to give you fluids and stuff. And I was just begging them to give me something to take away the nausea, because I was so sick. And they wheeled me into a cubicle next to a woman who was screaming, literally screaming. With every time she exhaled, she screamed. And I was going out of my mind.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, it was insane. And there was no place to put me. And I had to flip this thought. Like, I know that at some point we're going to talk about my book, but a lot about my book is about changing a thought. And I had to get control of my mind and change my thought, instead of being annoyed at this woman, to think of how much pain she must be in, or how scared she was to be screaming, like literally screaming. I asked the nurse, what's wrong with her? Nobody would say. Nobody's going to tell you, you know. So that went on for a long time. Wow. And then eventually they came and they did a chest x-ray of me and an ultrasound of my lungs. And a pulmonary specialist came and gave me the diagnosis that I had COVID double pneumonia. And it shocked me. It really did, because I was sure I had the virus, but I wasn't thinking in terms of pneumonia.
I didn't know you could get anything other than COVID-19. I didn't know there was even like variations on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of variations, and people seem to get different symptoms. Some people got mild symptoms. You know, my symptoms were more severe. There were people there much worse than me. So
it sounds almost like as soon as you called the ambulance, like you got worse. You know what I mean? Like it's interesting, like, because it sounds like you were getting worse as soon as you got to the hospital.
I don't know, but it was a great feeling to know that there were people that were going to take care of me.
Yeah.
Because it's a very alone, to be that sick and be by yourself. It's really scary. You don't know what's going to happen to you.
And you did it for that many days by yourself.
14 days, yeah. They were debating whether to send me home. They weren't keeping everybody who came in. And I was like, I told them, I said, look, I can't do it anymore. I've been alone. I can't take care of myself anymore. I'm too sick. And when they saw my lungs on the x-ray, they decided to keep me. So they wheeled me upstairs to a room finally. They put me in isolation. And it was a big, gorgeous room. If I hadn't been sick, this room would have been amazing. It was a huge room.
Is it on like the, what floor is it on? I think I've been there.
It was in the Kimmel Center. They said, I looked all over for Jimmy, but he wasn't there. I'm like, where's Jimmy? But it was like, I was trying to joke. I was too sick. The room was so big. It had huge windows that were overlooking the East River. Mm-hmm. And it was a private room with a huge bathroom.
Wow.
And a TV that stretched the entire wall. It was like a 6-foot TV.
Oh my God.
So that you had to work it by remote control to order your food on the TV, to adjust the lights, to adjust the shades in the room. You had to adjust everything, but nobody knew how to work it because they were so busy that they were bringing nurses from other floors to work in there who had never been there before. They were nice enough to figure it out for me, because by the time I got to my room, I was too late for lunch. and I was really hungry. I was so nauseous. I thought maybe I'm nauseous from not eating too, because I hadn't eaten all day. And this nurse was nice enough to call the kitchen and let them make me a lunch, which was really great.
Wow.
And the food there was actually great. You think hospital food is horrible? The food was amazing.
At Langon, it's so good. Yeah.
But sometimes I couldn't eat for hours. I could look at the food. Like I couldn't get myself to move sometimes for an hour. I would think of something I wanted to do and I couldn't get myself to do it. It was crazy. And the first day they were so overrun, they didn't even have a pillow for me. They wrapped up some rough kind of blanket. They were out of bedding. That's how many patients they had.
Okay, so they were really slammed. Yeah, but this was
They were really slammed, and I'm in isolation, and only one person is allowed in the room. The next day, I didn't get any medication that first day. They put me on oxygen. That was it. The second day, they started me on Plaquenil, and I was so happy to hear that they had it. They were doing studies with it. They gave me a double dose in the morning and a double dose at night. And they gave me zinc, but they didn't give me more Z-Pak because I had been on it for 10 days. And by that second night, I started to feel a difference. I started to feel a little better. And they told me the next day they were probably going to move me. They also covered me with ice to bring down my fever.
Wow.
They put ice on my head and under my arms, which you would think would be very uncomfortable, but it wasn't. And ice on my legs. And they brought my fever down to 98.6, and it brought tears to my eyes. I can't tell you. I was affected emotionally by a lot of the things that went on. And they told me that they were going to move me the next day, and I'm like, why? And they said, because we need this room for sicker people. It had been a room that they were using for cancer patients, and they moved the cancer patients to create a COVID wing.
Mm-hmm.
One nurse could come in at a time, only one. And they were so strict in closing the door. It was something called a negative pressure room, where the air doesn't circulate outside, only inside. And the next day they moved me, and that became a nightmare because they moved me into a room with 3 other very sick men, all of them with the virus.
Whoa.
And they seemed to be sicker than I was even. The man next to me was a very old Chinese man who didn't speak English.
Uh-oh.
Choking. Oh, it was right. He was choking and I thought he was dying. I really.
Like, are you patient one? You're famous. Yeah.
I never heard sounds like that. He was choking and strangling on his saliva, and I had to call the nurse on his behalf.
Oof.
I was also nervous for me because the guy is coughing into the air, and I'm laying right next to him on my second day in the hospital. And they couldn't move me. I said, is there any other place to put me? They're like, people are in the hall already. People don't even have rooms.
Wow.
So a guy in my room, but across the room from me, had to be rushed to a ventilator because his oxygen dropped very suddenly from 93 to 80. And that was one of the things with the virus, that you could be okay 1 minute and 2 minutes later, you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to race this guy to a ventilator, and all of us are sharing one small bathroom. That was a nightmare for me.
Wow.
That was horrible.
You should have led with that. That's the worst part. Oh my God.
I know, that's the absolute worst part. So then they told me that they were probably going to send me home the next day, and I was thinking, so soon, I need to stay. But considering this room I was in,
you got to get away from that Chinese guy. Yeah.
The more I thought about it, the more I thought, yeah, I want to go home. I really want to go home. So they said they were going to try to discharge me by noon because my fever had come down. They took my oxygen out to see how I would do on my own. And they had me walk across the room to see if my oxygen would stay stable. And my oxygen stayed at 95 to 96%. And they said that was great. Anything over 93 was acceptable. So they said they were going to try and send me home by noon. By 2 p.m. the next day, nobody had come, and I was concerned.
Wow.
And it was just because they were so busy. A doctor came in, he goes, I ordered your release this morning, but they're just overwhelmed with people. So at 3:30, an ambulance crew came for me. And again, 2 really nice guys. I hopped up on that stretcher by myself. I was I was just psyched to get out of there. And
you're like, let me drive the ambulance.
The interesting thing is, they don't let you go from the hospital because you're better. they let you go because they think you're strong enough to finish recuperating on your own. They just get you strong enough, like if your breathing is better and your fever is down, they let you go because they said they needed the beds for other people. So it wasn't like I was better. I had to go after I got home. I mean, these guys drove me home. They strapped me in. I was never strapped in like that. I couldn't move. My hands were strapped to my side, and they wrapped me like a mummy. And I said, do me a favor, just uncover my face, because the people in my building, I think I passed away. It's
Oh
like,
my God. Yeah.
they put 2 masks on me, and they wheeled me in, and they took me up to my apartment, and they carried my bags in for me. And then when they saw all the pictures of all the comedians, they wound up hanging out for 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Asking me all these questions. They were having a good time until I got too tired. I'm like, guy, I'm sorry, I need to get some rest. And I put things down, and I didn't touch them for about 3 weeks. I couldn't bear to look at the bags that I had in the hospital. I had like PTSD.
Whoa.
But first of all, I was still so sick. So when I came home, I developed pleurisy a few days later, which is an inflammation of the lungs, which is very common after you have pneumonia. So I had to go back on Z-Pak again for my 3rd time. I actually
Is that a Z-Pak you had, or they gave you one?
I called my doctor to get another one. Yeah, because I had run out. I only had those first 2 courses. And I always like to keep it in the house. I got to have extra because for me, it's a miracle drug. I actually went on a 4th course about a week ago because something was wrong in my throat. And so I got this pleurisy thing, and then one day all my glands swelled up, and I couldn't touch my face. It was so painful. And under my arms, I'm taking a shower, and it's hurting. There's glands under your arms too, lymph glands that swell up. So it's been a crazy process. It takes a very long time to get past this thing. Some people seem to get over it in a few days if they have mild symptoms. But my doctor said with double pneumonia, it can take a couple of months, which is actually what it did. So the hospital called me to see how I was doing. And I said to them, can I assume I have some kind of immunity? Or do I have to worry about being reinfected? And they're like, well, to be honest with you, we don't know.
Wow.
Because it's too soon. Nobody has really done any research yet. So what was nice, though, I was so grateful to the hospital that I made a donation, and I wrote a thank you note on their website. And I called the hospital to see if there was a way to donate, because there's a lot of scams going on. You have to be careful. You can't just donate online anywhere. So I called the hospital first, and they directed me to their website. So I wrote this thing, and a couple of days later, I got a call from someone at the hospital asking if I'd be willing to be interviewed to help them with their fundraising.
Oh, wow. You're like perfect for that.
Yeah, I said, sure, I would love to do that. So I did that. And on Giving Tuesday, on that Tuesday, they told me that I helped them raise $80,000.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And I don't know how much of that came from me. It could have been $10 from me, but they said that it was very successful, and they were grateful. And I was glad that I could do something, because those people are really heroes. I was so grateful to everybody that helped me, from the transport people to the ambulance workers to the people that cleaned the rooms. Everybody was friendly, and they really they were putting themselves in great danger just by being there. That's their job, you know. I understand that too, that when you become a doctor or a nurse, there's a commitment that you make to helping people get better. They would feel too guilty if they just stayed home. But it still takes a lot of courage to show up, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And it was amazing to me. The people were so nice. So that's the story. And I've been, you know, it's only the past few days. I was afraid to go out of the house. I went out of the house, I think 2 days ago or 3 days ago for a little while. I had a fear, really, of going in the street. And I did a podcast with a doctor from Colorado who told me that he's pretty sure he has PTSD also.
Wow.
Just trying to take care of so many sick people. It's overwhelming to them, and seeing so many people die. You know, in New York City alone, 22,000 people have died already from this thing. So it's really serious, you know. And when I was out in the street, it's surreal walking through Manhattan, you know.
Yeah, it feels like someone sucked all the life out of it.
it's like a science fiction movie. I was
Yeah.
even saying that in the hospital. You know, there were a couple of nurses that were really went out of their way to make me comfortable. They hold my hand. They said to me, "You're going to be okay. You're doing really good." And again, I can't tell you how much that means. And then Ron Bennington, I mean, the comedy community
Yeah, I
supported.
saw his post. Yeah.
Unbelievable, man. He and Gail talked about it on the radio. And I got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of messages from people. I couldn't answer anybody. I was too weak,
Mm.
but it helped so much. And people, you know, like Bill Burr, Jim Norton, Nick Kroll
Wow.
and John Mulaney, Bert Kreischer, they all posted beautiful messages of support for me.
Mm.
But I can't tell you how much that means when you're that sick, you know. I'm a very big believer in the power of prayer and the power of thought.
Yeah.
And when so many people are focusing their energy on one thing, I really think that it has an effect.
Of
So,
course. Yeah.
and then our friend Corinne Fisher and Harrison Greenbaum went out and made a video for me, a get well video that so many comedians were in. And that was so beautiful. It actually brought tears to my eyes again to watch all
Aw.
that. It was really very special. And Gad Elmaleh called me from Paris.
Wow.
The head of Netflix was praying for me. The Just for Laughs Festival got in touch with me. Levity Live, all the club owners, everyone stayed in touch with me. Chris Mazzilli, Richie Tinkin, Noam Dwarman,
Mm.
you know, Emilio. Everybody stayed in touch with me, and they all wished me well. And it's an amazing thing to realize, like, there are times in comedy and just in general, you can feel very alone in the world. You know,
Yeah,
you
you're
don't
doing a lot
really
of it
know.
by yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody knows. It's not until you're really sick that people tell you how much they care about you.
Mm.
It's a crazy thing. If we all did that all the time, I mean, everybody hugs when we see each other, and that's really nice. But it really helped me a lot to get all these supportive messages. Richie Tinkin wanted to drive me home from the hospital.
Wow.
And he's in a high risk category. And I said, Rich, don't worry, I'm going to take the ambulance. You don't have to do that. He was going to drive in from New Jersey to drive me home to make sure that
Wow.
I'm okay. And just like that kind of stuff, you know, like amazing support. So I'm so grateful for that. You know, it's so nice to know that you have that many friends and that people are pulling for you. And I think that really helped a lot. And I had to work very hard to stay positive. It's, you know, I used all the principles in my book, you know. It's easy to talk the talk, but you got to walk the walk too.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, like, how did you, put the principles of your book and the things that you know into play during all this?
I had to keep myself from going to a negative place, especially when I was in that room with the other 3 sick guys, because it was very easy to be depressed. And I had to start thinking, you know, there's a tendency to think, why me, when you're sick like that? And then the answer is, why not me?
Mm.
You know, whoever promised you that your life is supposed to be perfect, that everything's supposed to work out? You know, there are certain spiritual principles that I've incorporated into my thinking. I've been studying spirituality for almost 25 years. And I've been doing it in order to learn how to change the way I think. I used it, you know, I don't know if you know this, but I stuttered very badly through my 20s and beyond that.
Yes, yeah, I remember you telling me that, like, when I went to your apartment when we did like the interviews or like the content for some other project I was working
Yeah,
on.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So in order to stop stuttering, in order to cure myself, I had to learn to change my mind, literally change my mind. That's why the book is called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind. Healing your heart meaning letting go of the pains of our past. Since the time you're a kid, every time someone hurt your feelings or broke a promise to you or broke up with you in a relationship or hurt you in some way, it stays inside of you. It's a wound to your heart chakra, and I call them heart wounds. And they affect your self-esteem and your self-confidence. And they literally affect every decision you have to make in your life. Because every time you have to make a decision, you use your thoughts to try to figure out what to do, right? And if your thoughts are faulty, your decisions are not going to work for you. So it's the reason why people keep getting the same bad job, whether in the same bad relationship. Their relationships never seem to work out. and the only common denominator is them. The other people change, but they keep showing up.
Is there like a sort of age range, like beginning at this age till about this age, that you can say that you're the most, I guess, spongy for these kind of like heart wounds, or is it really your whole life?
Well, it's your whole life, but the heart wounds that you accumulate as a child are the ones that affect you the most.
Mm-hmm.
They stay with you, and it's really crazy. And so it's important to try to release them. And because knowledge is power, understanding what they are, first of all, and admitting to them is a big thing. So as an avocation, I work with stutterers and I teach them how not to stutter. I teach them my technique. And it's a very involved technique, and it involves all areas of your life. It's not about just doing exercises to speak. I realized that one day I realized I didn't stutter when I was alone. I could go into a room by myself and speak fine. But when I try to talk to you, to anybody else, I would stutter, which told me that there's really nothing wrong with me, because you can't have a disability based on your location, right? Like a man with a limps in every room of his house. He can't go into a room and close the door and walk perfectly and then come out and start limping again. It's a true disability. But if I could speak fine when I'm by myself, then it means that there's really nothing wrong with me. It's in my head. I created it. So any thought that you create, you can also uncreate. And it takes a lot of work. All of us are holding negative thoughts about ourselves. If you were ever bullied as a child, or people made fun of you, or anything like that, anytime, like a stranger could make a remark about you, and it'll stay with you. And it gives you a negative thought about yourself. And those are the kind of things that need to be released, because we actually, as I said, we hold on to them for decades sometimes. People harbor resentments. They hold on to these things, and it just damages us. So I'm very big about, learning how to change a thought. And I had to do that a lot in the hospital. So while I'm laying there, I'm thinking, hey, I'm sick, but there's a lot of people here that are much worse than me. So I have to be grateful that it looks like I'm getting better, and that I'm going to get out of here, because a lot of people are not going to leave. And I had to do that with myself on a constant basis. And I was trying to joke around, in the ambulance, when I said to the guy, uncover my face so they don't think I passed away, or when I had a heart attack, I was on the operating table. They were putting a stent in my heart, and I was still awake, and I felt it. And I said to the, it was crazy. I'm watching it on a screen, and I'm like, and I said to the surgeon, hey.
Talk about a heart wounds. Jesus Christ.
I know, it's not crazy. And I said to him, I feel you in my heart, not in a romantic way, but I feel you in my heart. And he said, I'll give you more anesthetic. And that's the last thing I remember. I was out. But I was even joking around on the operating table. So when you're always looking for what's funny, it gives you a different way of looking at the world.
Yeah. Why do you think we hang on to those negative comments and negative memories, or even like what we tell ourselves every day that's not necessarily true? Like, why do you think human beings like hang on to those things?
Because on some level we're afraid that they're true, and we believe them. And when you're a little kid, if someone says something that hurts you, you're not formed enough yet to doubt it, to say, you know what, that's not true about me. It's like high school is usually a difficult time for everybody. I never understand when people say, oh, high school was the best time of their lives. I'm like, you should probably kill yourself if high school was the best time of your life.
Was your dad president, or the principal? Yeah.
I stopped going to reunions, but when I went years ago, it was so funny watching all the girls who thought they were so hot in high school and how they evolved.
And they're so fat now. That's the best.
And they're horrible, right? They're just horrible. And all the guys who thought they were so cool, they're just not anymore. But yet when it came time to break up, like I went to one reunion and they had a dinner. And when it came time to be seated, I could see what was happening. People were breaking up into the same cliques that they were in high school. And I didn't want any part of it. So I went to a table that was empty and I sat down all by myself. And all the kids from the so-called hip group came to join my table. And they're like, Jeffrey, what's up? And I I, I thought to myself, if I only knew that when I was in high school, because when I went to high school in the yearbook, they still were doing things like the prettiest girl, the handsomest guy, you know, and I was voted most talented. And it was like cause I played the piano and the drums, you know, and
Pretty
so
amazing. Yeah.
it was like a popularity contest. If you didn't get one thing, they gave you something else. So I got most talented.
Mm-hmm.
So I was supposedly popular, but I never felt it. I never felt like I was part of a group. I always felt apart from.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why when I went to that reunion, I rejected that whole thing. I don't want any part of it. And it was so interesting to see that me just going by myself and sitting down and saying, screw you, I'm not going to deal with that.
You don't need a group. Yeah.
They came and sat with me. And I thought to myself, man, if I only knew that in high school, I would have been a lot more comfortable, you know?
But it's a scary move when you're still like a little, you know, you're still a kid and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna go be alone rather than like be with this group of like maybe losers I don't want to be with. But then that's like, then you get like tagged. Now you're with them. So
Well, you know what? Inside, we're all still kids.
yeah.
And
Oh,
that,
for sure.
that's always interesting to me too. That's why I play. You've been in my house, you know, it's filled with balloons and toys and crayons and stuff. And I do that for me, not necessarily for anybody else. When people come over to my house, I have them sign an egg. You know, I just do shit that makes me smile. You know, I do it for me because I'm very in touch with my inner child. People think that just because you grow up, that you have to be serious. And they lose that element in their life. You know, like when you're a little girl and your friends would come and say, hey, could Chrissy come out to play? And it would be so exciting. You'd be all excited. So that's not supposed to stop. You're supposed to do that too. When you're an adult, you're supposed to do serious things, but still go and have fun.
Yeah.
You know, in the comedy world, we get to have a lot of fun. We get to laugh and hang out with friends and, you know, do stuff that other people don't get a chance to do.
Yeah, like fun is our job, but it can easily slip into more of a job than fun. You know, it's like,
For
you do your
sure.
jokes, but it's like people forget to have joy. Like people forget to like really why they're there.
Well, life is very stressful, so it carries into every field. And it's very hard to have a career in comedy. You know, it's like everybody's life would be a lot simpler if they weren't in comedy, you know?
Yeah.
But most of us have no choice. It's such a drug. It's something that you need to do, you know? You can only suppress it for so long. Sometimes people get involved in a relationship where the other person doesn't want you out performing all the time. And eventually that leads to resentment. You can only suppress it for so long. And eventually you're going to hate that person for standing in your way, you know? And great success only comes to a few, you know, in comedy. You have to just realize that it's a hard thing. It's a very hard field. In most fields, you can go to school and get a degree.
There's a path. Yeah.
There's a path. There's a really good chance that you'll get a job in that field. And comedy, there's no such thing. You know,
And
there's
you could be super funny, you know?
Exactly. There's so much luck involved. You could be super, super funny, but if the right people never see you, you'll be funny to your friends and family. You know what I mean? It's like, or to a bunch of strangers, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing about comedy. But you do it because you love it, you know? And so it carries on into all areas of your life. So when I was that sick, I use that. We don't have a choice. We're always thinking, what's funny about this situation? You know, what's weird about it? What's different about it? It's just how we see the world. You know, we see the world in a completely different way than most people.
Yeah. And you've been doing this for decades. Have you ever experienced anything like this pandemic in terms of like disrupting the comedy community?
No, it's insane. It's insane. When I did the Comedy Cellar podcast, and Noam said to me, what would it take for you to come back to the clubs? And I said, that's such a good question. I don't know, because it's like he said, well, if we said we were opening June 1st, what would you do? I said, I'd see how the statistics were around May 27th.
Mm-hmm.
I'd see what's happening. I would, you know, because
go week to week. Yeah.
Me personally, I'm afraid to go out. A lot of people are not going to want to sit really close to each other because they're predicting a second wave of this stuff. You know, they're not saying if, they're saying it's a definite, that's how viruses go. In the pandemic of 1918, they said they lost more people in the second wave than they did in the first wave. And it usually comes a couple of months after. So
from where? Like, you know, if everyone's kind of neutralized and antibodies and
it seems that the virus mutates. You know, it's like when you take antibiotics, you kill some of the germs, but the ones that survive can become more powerful germs, but then they're not killed by the antibiotic. So viruses can mutate. There's different strains of this thing. And so it's kind of crazy. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, they're going to have to figure out something. I haven't done a Zoom show yet, you know. It seems weird to me. Like, to
it is weird.
And there's no audience, and if they're muted, there's no laughter, and you're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I've only done one where it's like some people, it was like I felt more, it was like, okay, let me just tell a funny story about what I've been up to the last 2 months, you know, and like some people were weaving in what might have been new bits in with just talking, but I can't do that. It's like I have to just kind of like riff like a podcast. I can't just do material into a computer.
Yeah, it's just really hard. But I was just going to ask you, so tell me about what you've been doing. First of all, can I say that you look great?
Oh, thanks.
You really look great. I like you without makeup and just like hanging out. And
I've been wearing so much less makeup. That's probably like the biggest. Well, yeah, I haven't worn high heels in 2 weeks. My feet are getting soft.
I was just going to say too, that you're one of the few people, you dress for the stage. You bring an air of elegance to the show. You always wear like a dress and heels, but this looks really nice. It really, really does.
Looks like I could fall asleep any minute. Yeah, I'm in my jammies.
So what's been happening with you guys?
We've been going on walks. We've been like definitely more like nature people, hiking. Like I got a bird feeder. I'm into watching birds. We got a baby tortoise.
Yeah.
That it's super cute. Like once you get the enclosure set up, it's pretty low maintenance and they don't smell and there's not like shit everywhere. It's like
turtles,
like this big. He's like teeny.
Yeah, they're so cute. That little head that pokes out from the shell.
It's so cute, and like he's still at the point where he thinks we're gonna eat him. So sometimes we come around, he just like he turtles up and like digs down below his like dirt. But
where'd you get him from?
Frank actually ordered him off the internet, maybe somewhere, like Georgia, Florida, Nevada.
That's hilarious. You order a turtle from Nevada.
He came in a box, like packaged up through the mail, and then just opened it like a pint of matzo ball soup. It's like same thing, but it's like newspaper clippings, and then he's just sitting right there, like
that is so crazy.
So that's been pretty fun. Yeah, like a lot of walks, a lot of me like not putting on a pound of makeup every day. And you know, I hear some people like, oh, I write jokes every day, and that hasn't been my thing. I'm more like, you know, beefing up my YouTube and online content and just trying to like post a lot and like stay regular.
Well, it's interesting to have all this extra time. Like most of us are so busy that I always think of things I want to do. Like I've been playing the piano a lot. I haven't played in so long. I'm back to playing the piano every day. I'm doing certain stretching exercises that I wanted to do. I'm working on a new book. I think I'm finished with it. I'm in the process of rereading it. It's a follow-up to my first book on happiness.
Oh, wow. That was fast.
Yeah, it's called Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way. And it's about...
Can I pre-order a copy now?
That would be wonderful. Absolutely. I mean, I'll ask you for, you know what I'll do? I'll send you like a first draft for an editorial review, because you have to start collecting reviews before. That's a good way to do it. That's how I did my last book. And it's about like every day I confront uncomfortability. So many things make me uncomfortable. It's why, like in October, I went to Japan by myself.
Wow.
And I made myself go alone because it was the scariest thing I ever thought of to do. And it was crazy. and I stayed for 2 weeks. Every ridiculous thing happened to me that could, and I made it, 14-hour flight.
What
It
were
was
you afraid
crazy.
of going into the trip?
Just the fact of going that far, I took Japanese level 1 3 times to try to prepare, and they tell you everybody speaks English over there, and that's not true. I was lost literally on a daily basis. In New York City, when you get off the subway, it's pretty easy to find your way to the street. No matter where you are, you can always get to the street. In Japan, no, it's not that way. First of all, a lot of times you're 4 levels down. You have to take 4 escalators to get down to the subway. That's how far underground it is.
Wow.
And when you get off the subway, it's not enough to know your stop. There are 18 to 20 different exits, and each exit takes you to a different part of the city.
Oh, God.
And some of them are blocks apart. And I didn't know this. So one day,
Like, I know we have that with Grand Central Terminal. Like, they have different exits where maybe you can be like within like 3 blocks difference, but nothing
nothing like this. I
drastic.
was in the Shinjuku station, which is known as the biggest train station in the world. And there are literally thousands of people converging at you from every angle, and no one speaks English. And my Japanese was really limited, and it was a real struggle for me. I performed in 2 shows while I was there.
Wow.
Which was really cool. They don't have comedy clubs. They have bar shows.
Hmm.
Do you know Tom Rhodes?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Tom is a really good friend of mine, and he connected me to somebody over there. He's one of the few comics that works the whole world, So he knew people in Japan. Yeah. And I had a friend who used to live here who's a comedian, and she hooked me up with the show. And it's all expats. I wasn't performing for Japanese people, except one guy. This was so crazy. A Japanese guy came over to me after the show, and he goes, "I can't believe I'm meeting you. I'm such a big fan from the Black Phillip Show, a show I did with Patrice O'Neill."
Oh my gosh, that goes way back.
2008. I have one fan in Japan. I couldn't believe it.
You're big in Japan.
We took pictures together. I'm like, I got to take a picture with you. Nobody would believe this.
That's
crazy.
Really cool.
Yeah, and so it was fun doing shows. It's all expats, like from Scotland and Ireland and England, all English-speaking countries. There's a lot of young people over there who speak English, from those countries. And it's just that getting around was really, really hard. The people were so friendly and so polite. It's so sick that we were at war with this country. It's a crazy thing to think that 75
nuked them. Yeah.
We nuked them. We were killing each other by the hundreds of thousands.
Were you going around being like, sorry about the nukes? Like, did you feel guilty?
I didn't go to Hiroshima, but I went to 3 different cities. I spent a week in Tokyo, and then I took a bullet train to Kyoto. They have these trains that go 300 miles an hour. And I went to Kyoto, and then I did a day trip to Osaka. And I'll tell you, while I was away, 5 different times, Japanese people left where they were going to physically take me where I was going.
Wow.
That's how nice they are. 2 girls got off the subway. They were going to a different city. And I just happened to ask them if they knew what stop my hotel was. And they said, "We take you." And they got off the train with me and walked me to my hotel.
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy. A woman carrying a little boy, 3 years old, no carriage, carrying the kid. And I asked her which way is Yanaka, which was an old part of the city. And she didn't have enough English. She's like, "I take you." And she took me like 10 minutes carrying this child, 10 minutes out of the way, through a train station, down an escalator, out a back door.
My God, why are they so nice? It's almost like I would be afraid like someone's going to murder me.
They're raised that way. It's natural to them.
Yeah.
They're such giving, kind people. Yet they don't stand up for elderly people on the subway. I was on the subway, and an old woman, like 90 years old, got on, and no one stood up for her. They let her stand.
Asian ladies are pretty savage when it comes to seats on the subway. That I learned just from New York City. It's like
only in New York, but not in Japan. Things are really different and so clean. Oh my God! Do you know that there are no garbage pails in the street?
What?
Nothing. You have to take your garbage home with you.
Oh my God!
I had a banana. I had to put the banana peel in my pocket.
Oh, that's the worst to carry around and slimy.
Yeah, it was staying in my pants. There was no garbage pails. They don't expect you to throw anything away. Once in a while in the subway, they have a garbage pail, and it's not a pail. It's a big thing that has sections in it for recycling. But in the street, there's no garbage. Nobody throws. The streets are so clean, you can't believe it.
That's
There's
how it
no-
is, though, because if there's already trash on the street, people are like, they feel more anonymous, and they're like, well, who gives a shit? But like, if your trash is the first trash, then you're gonna feel like an asshole.
And the hotels were amazing. I stayed in nice places, and the concierges were so helpful. They wrote things out for me in Japanese to give to taxi drivers, or like if I was traveling, and they send your luggage to the next city. You know, in New York, that would never
Wow.
happen because there's not a lot of room on the bullet trains. So I was concerned because I have, I travel heavy, man, like Elizabeth Taylor. I have a lot of bags. I got
Yeah.
one thing just
Your
for my
scarves
hair.
alone take up a
That's
bag.
right. Exactly. So they said to me, you're going to have trouble, but we have a courier service through the hotel where they send your bag to the next city. And when you get there, your bag is in your hotel room waiting for you. So I'm like,
Wow.
this would never happen in New York. Can you imagine how many days you'd have to wait to get it
Woo! Yeah, that's
without
above and
clothes?
beyond. That's extra.
But in Japan, it worked. So they sent my luggage ahead. I was so nervous to part with my luggage, to
It's
let
like
them
parting
get,
with a limb. Yeah, especially when you're abroad.
but they sent it. It got there. But while I was in Kyoto, the typhoon hit. There was a typhoon in October. And the timing was lucky too, because this was just before the coronavirus. I was there the middle of October.
Wow.
And it wasn't that long afterwards that people were getting sick there. So the typhoon hit, and I had just left Tokyo. So luckily I missed it. In Kyoto, we just had a lot of rain. But I wanted them to send my luggage back because I had to go back to Tokyo. And they wouldn't do it because they couldn't guarantee me that it would get there in one day. And I said, well, I don't care if it takes 3 days. I'm not leaving for 4 days. So, but they said, no, because we guarantee one day. And if we can't guarantee it, we won't do it. They're so exact.
Boy,
So
wow. Those Asians.
I had to call the concierge and I had to say, listen, in a country like Japan, with the technology that you have, there must be a way that you can figure out how to get my bag 2.5 hours away. So she got my point and she called another company and they came. She goes, but it's going to cost another $8. I said, don't worry, just do it. Yeah, just do it. You know? And it got there. It was fine, And everyone's bowing all the time. They bow on the plane. They bow at when you get in the elevator. There are women stationed at the elevator to bow to you when you get in the elevator.
No, really?
Get out. Yeah, really. It's like a lot of bowing going. You have to go.
Do they have a lot of lower back pain in that country from all the bowing?
I don't know about back pain, but they must have great abs.
Yeah. They're kind of like, we're just doing this for our six-pack. We're not really respecting anybody.
A lot of vertical crunches are going.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of this, It's like,
wow.
Hajime mashite.
Ooh, what does that mean?
It means, how do you do? Like I usually say, Hajime mashite, Jeffrey des, dozo yurishiku. It means, how do you do? My name is Jeffrey. Nice to meet you.
Ooh, I'll start saying that, even though my name's not Jeffrey.
It's a nice thing to say to people. Hajime mashite.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting language. And I went on tours. I met fun people. I had to climb like hills and mountains. Everything in Japan is real high. I went to old castles. I love this, going to old temples, Buddhist temples, like from the Middle Ages.
Wow.
Incredible stuff. It's a fantastic country, but it's just a very long trip. And you know how high tech they are? The Wi-Fi is so bad that you have to rent a portable Wi-Fi when you get to Japan.
Really?
You have to carry it in your pocket wherever you go to carry a signal, because otherwise your phone wouldn't work.
But yet everything else is so good with the luggage and the...
Everything else is so high tech. Japan, and every street, it's insane. Every street is so lit up. It's like Times Square every place you go. But the people are so quiet and reserved. And yet they have the craziest porn in the world. There's such a big disconnect between the people and what you see in the street. The streets are insane.
Did you see any panty vending machines?
No, I saw a lot of crazy vending machines. I didn't see any ones that had the panties. I know that they're there, that it's true. I went through the Kabukicho area without knowing it. I accidentally filmed some hookers. I didn't mean to. And they were screaming at me, and I was nervous that the Yakuza guys were going to come after me.
Wow.
My Japanese friend was taking me on a tour, and I was shooting on my phone. And there's this whole area called Kabukicho, which is the red light district. And so...
Yeah, where do you go to get your kabuki?
Exactly, right. And so...
It sounds like what it is.
All of a sudden, all these girls were like screaming at me. And I didn't realize, and I just started walking fast. I was really nervous because all the clubs there are run by the Japanese mafia.
Whoa.
So if you go into bars and stuff, I didn't go into bars because I don't drink. So I wanted to save myself some aggravation because I heard that when you go into bars, when you're ready to leave, the mob guys shake you down. They tell you there are extra charges if you're American.
For just Americans or everybody goes to a bar?
No, just if you're not Japanese.
Whoa.
So I didn't take any chances. I didn't want to mess with that. That was not something that I wanted to do. I was so tired. I went to bed early a lot of days. I didn't do any clubbing, any nightlife stuff.
That's nice. Yeah.
It was really nice. I would wake up really early, like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I
like
felt
a grown-ass man. Yeah. Just like, look, not hungover. No extra charges. Yeah.
I had very full days. I took lots of notes while I was there so I could write about it. And you know, in my book, in this new book, Fighting the Fear, there's a whole chapter on my trip to Japan because it was one of the biggest fears is traveling alone, to go so far away. And I make myself do everything that other people seem to do comfortably. Like the airports, well, not now, but the airports are always filled with millions of people who are going all over the world. And so I figure if they can do it, I have to be able to do it. So that's my challenge.
Yeah.
You know, my fears are unreal. I grew up, I was never told that the world was a safe place.
Mm.
So I grew up with a lot of fears, and I hate it. And so I have to confront my fear on a daily basis. Do you have fears?
Oh God, so many. Yeah. And I've been in therapy now, like ever since my mom was diagnosed with brain cancer. So it's like, but I kept going for myself because I know, you know, I have stuff to work on and patterns to unravel. So maybe I think I've been going now like maybe 4 years, and yeah, like tons of fears around like, I guess like, rejection, I guess, stemming from that is like friends will break up with me over my, I don't know, a political belief. I have a fear like, that like my boyfriend's gonna like leave me, like unfounded stuff of like super angry at my dad, like like, you know, growing up regular like angry girl stuff, but also like, you know, he really, I don't think treated my mom well, like in the last couple of years or last couple of months. Like he just refused to get extra help. He was like, I could take care of her all by myself, but then would be so resentful about it. And like, I had to eventually come to a place where I was like, he's a limited person. He, you know, just to try to like, you really have to just get conscious and separate yourself from like the pain of it and like taking it all so personally and just be like, this person did the best they could. Our parents did the best they could with what they had at the time. And
Exactly.
it takes so much self-talk though to like, and I've been reading a lot of self-help books too. And like your thoughts are so powerful. Like you create everything around you with your thoughts. And like, and a lot of people think self-help is about like denying your reality and like pretending things are great when they're not. And really it's all just about like a baby step. Like just take where you're at and just be like, what's the best thought I can have in this moment? Or how can I have like, you know, like an inch of a better thought? You know what I mean? Like, how can I make a tiny baby step into, okay, well, it's possible I'm not going to die alone, you know, like.
Exactly. Well,
yeah.
Those are all the things I addressed in the book, and everything that you mentioned were heart wounds.
Mm-hmm.
All those things, and especially having a parent that's so sick. Yeah, of course it affects you and gives you fears of mortality and fears of illness, because that can happen to anybody. All of a sudden, one day you're okay and the next day you're not. There's no guarantee. You know, there's nothing like health. When I was laying there in the hospital, I've always known this, but you realize it when you're sick, that if you have your health, you have everything. It doesn't matter what you've accumulated or what you've accomplished. If you're not well, it feels like you have nothing. It's so horrible to be sick. And so you have to be really grateful when you're not, and you have to be grateful for the things that you have. You know, there's two spiritual principles that are really important: gratitude and service. To be grateful for the things that you do have, and to do service to help another human being, to try to step outside of yourself, because naturally we're all very self-centered. We think about ourselves all the time. We're worried about ourselves. Who else can you really think about? So you have to try and work extra hard to step outside of yourself. And those are the principles that I write about, because that's really fascinating to me, that you can literally change yourself, because you can get stuck in those thoughts. All the things that you mentioned, it's very easy to stay in that place, to be resentful of people and to wish things were different.
And to look for examples of things that reinforce the loop. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to realize that you're hurting yourself when you do that. You know, there's this great saying, resentment is like you taking poison, expecting the other person to die.
Yeah, you're also cutting yourself off from a new experience. Like, even if that has been a long-standing pattern, it's like you're denying yourself the future.
Exactly. And so there's so much to that. But self-talk is very important, to work it through, to try and examine your thoughts. It's very hard to be objective about your own thoughts. It's hard to examine your thoughts and say, you know what, that thought is not working for me. It's not a valid thought. It's a thought that was given to me by somebody else, and I need to let that go because it's working against me. There's a tendency to believe your thoughts. You know, if you have any kind of intelligence at all, you come up with a thought, and what's interesting to me is it's not based on your experience. Your thought is based on your interpretation of your experience. So you could have siblings grow up in the same house, and they're two completely different people. And if you ask them about their childhood, you think they had different parents.
Yes, that's exactly how I feel about me and my brother and my sister. I'd be like, aren't you all mad? Aren't we all mad at dad? What? Like, where do you put it? Like, what? How are we not all angry? Like, what? Not everybody had a chair thrown at them. God damn it. Yeah.
Yeah, because everybody processes things in a different way. And that's really interesting.
What do you think, Jeffrey, are the 3 biggest takeaways from this book that's out right now, in case people listening are curious?
Well, I want to say first that it's available on Amazon and in bookstores like Barnes & Noble, if there still are any bookstores. And it's available as an ebook. It's available as an ebook, as a paperback, and as an audiobook. That came as a miracle. I was wondering how to do an audiobook, and I got an email from a huge company that said, we read your book and we love it. Would you like to do an audiobook?
And were you the person like reading it? Like,
yeah, they let me read it. Yeah, they asked me for a tape of my voice because they hire people, and they said they like the way I sound.
That's great.
I read my own book and I did it. They gave me 4 days in the studio, and I did it in 1 day and 40 minutes. They said they never saw anybody do a book so fast. It just flowed. I didn't make
why not? This is a great book.
It was great. Yeah. I knew the book because it was my book. So takeaways are just, you know, be open to new thoughts. Allow yourself to change your mind. You know, if you're not happy the way you are, you don't have to stay that way. That there's a path for you, and you can change. And to try to always stay positive. You know, my personal goal is to always try to put positive energy out to the universe. That's what I tell people. In all the years I wrote about the comedy scene, I never write anything negative about anybody. If I don't like what somebody did, I just didn't write about it. Because
I wish the rest of the internet would follow that example.
Well, people don't. People are engaged in negativity all the time. There are mean trolls. There are people who are anonymous that get off on writing hurtful things about people. You know, you're supposed to let that go when you're a kid. Making fun of people, talking about all kinds of shit. That's just not what I want to do. I want to support people who deserve it. If someone has a bad, like I respect everybody that goes on stage because I know how hard it is to perform. So I never wanted to write about anything like that. So my takeaways are to just try to stay positive, to try to do something good, to think before you say something, and to realize that you can change your thoughts. You don't have to be stuck where you are, and that they should get this book.
And this book will show you how to do it.
It has a meditating dog on the front, right? You know how hard it is to get a dog in lotus position?
Impossible. Where do you put the tail? Yeah.
And I got incredible reviews on the back from psychiatrists and psychologists, people whose field this is, who gave me, 5-star reviews. The only comedian I used was Richard Lewis, because in all my other books, this is my 6th book.
Wow.
All my other books are comedy related, and I get blurbs from like Colin Jost, and I can't even think of all the names, but all people in comedy. But this one was from Richard Lewis, who said, what did he say? Oh, Dr. Gurian is a master of so many disciplines, including being a brilliant humorist. The pressure probably caused his own heart attack. He's on my speed dial along with God. Richard Lewis, actor, comedian. He's the only comedian I put on it. But all the rest, people in recovery, gave it 5-star reviews. Religious people, like spiritual people. It's been very rewarding that so many people responded so positively to it. So that's why I'm working on a 2nd book, a follow-up to it. And I have a 3rd book that I actually started, but then I realized I got to finish the 2nd book before I work on the 3rd book.
Wow.
It's going to be
good
like
for you, Jeffrey.
Because you know what? It's interesting to me to fix your head, to not go through life the same way, but conquering obstacles. Everyone has obstacles. Everyone has something that they would change in their life if they could. And not everyone can. Some things you have to accept about yourself. And so it's always been fascinating to me to work on yourself and make yourself a project, and I've been doing that my whole life. That's how I stopped stuttering. That was just grace that I was able to figure that out, how to do that, because there was no one to help me. My parents sent me to speech therapy and no one was able to help me. And as you see, I don't stutter, and I use my voice in everything I do, on radio, on TV, on, audiobooks, comedy, whatever, so I'm very grateful, very grateful.
Yeah, well, Jeffrey, it's just a testament, like, you are getting back what you put out in the world. Like, you're a perfect example of, like, never stop improving yourself and, always be positive. So I'm so happy that you didn't die.
Me too. It makes life so much easier when you don't die.
You've had more near-death experiences than anybody I know. I'm so thrilled for this book. I can't wait for the next one. Where can people follow you, or would you rather just have them focused on getting this book ASAP?
Well, that would be nice if they get the book, but my website is comedymatterstv.com, and you'll also see the book on there. And my Comedy Matters TV YouTube channel has fun videos with everybody from Jimmy Fallon on down, Amy Schumer, Amy Poehler, even women not named Amy are on there. Everybody's on my channel. I have over 500 video interviews, and it's youtube.com/comedymatterstv. And then on Twitter and Instagram, it's @JeffreyGurian. And I'll just read you this thing that Nick Kroll wrote to me. He said, "Get well, Jeffrey. We're thinking of you and sending you all the healing vibes you send us."
Oh,
and I thought that was so nice. I thought that was such a nice thing. They all wrote really nice things to me, but that really stuck out. Nick and John have been really nice to me. Very supportive. I'm the first guy to have too much tuna.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to have any corn tuna, or,
They actually brought tuna to my room. Somebody said that.
Did you eat it?
Yeah, I ate it. Yeah, tuna's great. But they said it not as a joke. They didn't know. they're like, "Oh, is that too much tuna?" And it just struck me funny. I'm like,
Oh
"No,
my gosh.
it's absolutely perfect."
That's so funny.
Yeah, so that's where people can reach me, and my email is jeffrey@jeffreygurian.com if they want.
Great.
If they want
Well,
to.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for recovering and being you and doing my podcast. And I can't wait to see you as soon as it's possible.
Yeah, I want to give you a big hug,
Yes.
a virtual hug now. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
having me on. It was so great to see you, Chrissy.
You too, Jeffrey.
Send my best to Frank.
Oh, I will.
Okay,
Thanks,
see
Jeff.
you soon.
Love you.
Love you too,
Bye.
honey. Bye bye.